I'm JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe, please hit like, and let's get on with this particular video. So, frustrating watch problems. So this watch I got running, thought I had it running well, and I've shared a lot of the circumstances here that are causing this watch not to run, and I don't really know specifically why, but I have kind of an indication. So I've had a few people give me suggestions on what to do. I won't mention all the names, but a lot of people have given me suggestions on what to do. I woke up this morning and it wasn't running. Here it is there. And I'm like, oh poop, it's not running, so what the heck? And I bet you any money if I do this, no, it won't run. Did I take the power off it? I don't think I did. It's just not running. Let me just tighten this up just a bit here. So I thought, okay, what should I do? Let me just see if I can put a little bit of a wind on this thing. I may have to flip glasses here, so let's flip glasses. All right, I flipped glasses. I'm going to put a little bit of a wind on this watch here. I'm not sure if it wound down completely or it was just me. So there, I just turned the time setting with the bench key a slight bit, and the thing comes into action again. So this tells me that it's got to be something to do with the hour wheel, minute wheel interaction with the cannon pinion. Let me draw a picture and see if I can figure this out. So as I've said many times, this is all about friction. All about friction. So it has nothing to do with F equals ma. It has to do with friction. So here we've got the center wheel, right? So the center wheel is kind of underneath here. I'll just do this underneath the plate. And we have the pivot for the center wheel coming up. On top of that center wheel, you have a cannon pinion. So let me flip colors here. So the cannon pinion's job is to drive the gears that drive the minute and hour hands. So the cannon pinion, if you look at it from the top, you see something like this. I'm going to exaggerate a bit here. You see something like this, and as it goes down, you end up seeing a gear. And I'll draw my gear teeth here. That's like that. That's my gear. It's not really round, but that's my cannon pinion, my unrounded cannon pinion. And the cannon pinion is just tight enough to be able to rotate with the center wheel, and just loose enough that when you wind or set the watch, it'll move. And the friction is just so that it allows that cannon pinion to rotate to set the time. But when you're not setting the time, the cannon pinion has to grab onto that pivot of the center wheel and turn with it. And when it's turning with that pivot, it's in fact interacting with the seconds wheel. And the seconds wheel, let me see if I can draw this properly here. The seconds wheel just drops straight down. So the seconds wheel itself has its own little gear here. And then it has another gear that's interacting directly with the cannon pinion. So there's the seconds wheel there. And if you just had these two, they drop down onto the plate of the watch and they'd be level. So these would be level with each other, and this gear is interacting with this gear at this point here. So that's where the interaction happens. I'll just draw a little black line. So as the cannon pinion turns in this direction, say, I'll just do a simple direction arrow here. As the cannon pinion turns in this direction, this wheel would be turning in this direction, which means this pinion, which is a very small gear here, would be turning in the same direction. When you drop the hour wheel down now, so I'm going to take the hour wheel and drop it down on top of all this, I end up interacting this pinion here with the hour wheel gear. So I'm just going to draw the hour wheel as a circle here, and I'm going to make it a lot bigger. So I'm drawing the hour wheel. It's dropping down right over the top of the cannon pinion, and if you look down on it, you would see the hour wheel like that. and it does not have a pinion. It just has the leaves of the gear here touching here. So the situation is, if there is any drag, if you put your finger on that hour wheel, it could stop the watch. If you put the finger on the hour wheel and the watch is extremely powerful, then the center pivot will move because there's not enough friction to hold that center wheel from moving. So it would move. But if you put your finger on it, it's likely going to stop the watch or slow it down. So, and the problem I currently have is that this watch that's currently running right now, when I turn this here ends up being turned by, I'll just say there's a stem and a gear, right, just to make it simple. So I got myself a stem and I got myself some kind of a gear here that's going to end up turning. I'll just do this, which turns the minute wheel, which ends up turning the hour wheel, and the cannon pinion inside also turns, but the friction isn't great enough to hold it. So if the friction is just right, it turns, and that allows you to set the hands. That's kind of how that works in a very simple way. So my problem is when I put the hour wheel on and all of the wheel configurations, I have a really big problem. All right, I got to go to another portrait view of this. I'm going to do the impossible and draw upside down. So from the watch's perspective, you've got the hour wheel like this, and of course it has a pinion and everything else, but let's ignore that for now. You got the hour wheel, and I'll exaggerate here, and that is the pivot of the hour wheel coming up through the plate, and I'll just draw a big plate here. That's the plate of the watch, like that. So that's coming up through the plate, and then on top of this hour wheel you're pushing down the cannon pinion, and I'll just draw the cannon pinion like this, and it goes out just slightly. I'm exaggerating again just for the sake of making a point. And there are teeth right here, and these teeth will interact and be absolutely level with the minute wheel. I almost said second wheel, and the minute wheel also has, and I'll just draw that like that, like this, and it has a gear on the top that will interact when I throw and I'll draw it in a different color, black. When I throw the hour wheel down on top of the cannon pinion, it goes like this, and this gear interacts directly with this gear that's part of the minute wheel, right? So it's like that, and then there's nothing on this side at all. So it's a big ass gear that goes on top, and then when you fix the hands, or you affix the hands, this would go, I'll just push this out a bit more, like that, and the hands would be, I'll just push this out like this, like that, and the hour hand would attach to this here. I'll just put a little pointy on here. That's the hour hand, and it would attach to here like that, and make a little round thing here. And the minute hand would attach right here, and that would be longer, right? So the minute hand would be longer, and you'd have a little jobby-do, thingamajobby doohickey on the other end. So that's how the hands would attach. So where you see the friction point here is there's friction then between the pivot of the center wheel, which is the number 2 wheel if you count number 1 wheel as the mainspring. There's friction then between the pivot of that number 2 wheel, which is the center wheel, and the cannon pinion, and that allows, when there's force put on the minute hand by the setting mechanisms, it turns all this stuff to enable you to set the watch. Stuff is my technical term for today. Stuff. you want me to start drawing op amps? I'll draw op amps if you want me to. So it turns all this, and the friction has to be such that when it turns this, the cannon pinion can turn. It's basically scraping against the center pivot, and there's enough friction to allow this to release and turn the hands. When you do this and turn the hands, it releases and turns the hands. But when you're not setting the watch, there's enough friction on here to grab that pivot, so this works as one unit. So the actual pivot here and the cannon pinion are one unit, which allows this to drive this. So if there's any undue friction at this point here between the minute hand and the cannon pinion, let's say the minute hand is snagged up somehow and it's causing resistance, then the watch will slow down, because slow down or stop, because it's just not allowing it to move, right? If there's any resistance with the hour hand and the actual hour hand interfacing with the minute hand, then it'll interface with the cannon pinion and it'll also slow down. That's why when you have a watch where the minute hand accidentally touches the hour hand, because when you're setting the watch, when you're setting it up and installing the hands, you don't have enough of a gap there, and when it comes around it touches the hour hand, the watch stops. I've seen that many times, not as much lately because I'm pretty good at putting hands on and measuring that, and you've seen that in other videos. I make sure there's enough room here, and of course when you're putting a crystal on, and let's just draw the crystal like that. When you're putting a crystal on, you have to have enough space between the crystal and the actual minute hand so that it doesn't touch the crystal and stop the watch or slow it down, or the minute hand is not so low to avoid touching the crystal, but it touches the hour hand, and the hour hand's not so low that it actually might interface with the seconds hand that's somewhere down here somewhere. If it's a pocket watch, it's a sub-dial seconds hand, and let's just draw a little arrow, and it's moving around, and you don't want this to touch this. So that's why I always install the seconds hand first, then I install the hour hand, then I move the hands around to make sure that I've got nothing touching between the hour hand and the seconds hand, and I've got a good situation there, right? So my problem is this watch that seems to be running again, because all I did was turn the setting mechanisms, which means I engaged all of this to turn the cannon pinion, and I did it in the same direction as you would wind the watch to set it positively. And this is for a gentleman from Australia out there who knows who he is. And yes, when I did it in that direction, for sure the amplitude would increase, because I'm actually helping the pivot when I do it. If I turn it in the opposite direction, which I'm going to do right now to see what happens, it should be the opposite effect and actually slow the watch down and not help the pivot, right? So, but is there not enough friction or too much friction in this? So let's just put this in here, and I'm going to turn this in the opposite direction and just see what happens. So I do not see it slowing the watch down. So there's freedom there. There may be a snag in the actual hands that I've just showed you, or sorry, the gears that I just showed you, that at one point it kind of just gets snagged up. Mr. Spinner out there actually recommended, and Mark is the guy from Australia, by the way. Thanks, Mark, for all of your comments and suggestions. He's a professional watchmaker who's helped me over the years. And Chris is a friend. Mr. Chris Spinner is a great watchmaker, and he gave me some recommendations, and one was to actually smoothen the inside of the hour wheel, or sorry, the hour wheel, because that might be rough against the cannon pinion and causing the problem. So it's not happening right now, and if I turn it in the set the watch direction, or set the time direction forward, it's kind of also not happening, but I can feel some funky friction here as I'm doing this. Yeah, right there I feel a bit of a snag. So I want to see what that snag is and see whether there's an issue with when I turn this. Is there a point that this is turning where it snags up, and that's kind of how I'm going to diagnose this. So for Mark out there, making it go backwards doesn't seem to cause that problem. Making it go forward, not a problem at all. But when I got up this morning and shoved this in, moved it forward, it moved. I think I showed that in the video. So the next step here is I'm going to take off. So the other thing, one more thing before I do that, one more thing that could be a problem. On top of the hour wheel, there's a dial washer, right? Because the dial, I'll draw the dial in red. The dial would sit right on top of all this, right here, below the hands. That's the dial. And between the dial and the hour hand, there is a washer. And the washer goes right in. I'm not sure how to draw a washer, but it goes right in here, like that. And if you look at that washer, it looks like this. It's curved, it's got a hole in it, and it goes right over the hour wheel like that. So it actually pushes down. I should draw this properly. The hour wheel will be like this. Forget this other line here. It would be like this, and its job is that when the face goes down, it's pushing against that washer. I should draw that again. This is stupid, right? So let me draw the washer again. So here's, in this way here, the washer's right here. So I've got my wheel here, my wheelie good time here. So there's my wheel, my hour wheel, like that. And then dial washer is usually curved upward. So it's curved like this. And then the actual face of the watch, or the dial, would be pushed down like this. There's the dial going down like that, or the face of the watch. And this washer keeps this wheel down. It pushes this way to allow it to mesh properly with the pinion here. If it's not pushed down and you turn the watch face up, you end up with a situation where where this is not, the gears are not meshing between this pinion here and the gears of the hour wheel. So I'm watching the watch again, and it seems like it's slowing down again. So that's the other thing. So is this sandwich too much? Is this pushing down too hard on the hour wheel? I don't know. So, but if I look at the watch now, it's slowing down again significantly. And if I just turn this ever so slightly, is it going to speed up again? That's the question. I got a cough. I'll be right back. It's dust from watchmaking. So there it is there. And if I just turn this just a bit, is that going to resolve this? And the answer is yes. So there's a sticky point kind of right here. So I may just have a sticky point problem on this watch. So I'm going to take the dial off. There, I coughed out loud. And look at the gears to see where that sticky point might be. Could be a burr on the gear, or a tooth rather, or something, right? But I have to look at it because I think that's what's causing the problem. So now the watch is running well again, and it'll get to that wheel. And did that wheel take a minute to happen? So I can also time this and determine whether it took a minute to happen. But what I'll do is I'll turn it upside down, I'll run it, and then see when it really slows down. It's going to be a little tricky because I won't be able to watch the watch unless I put it on a piece of glass with a camera underneath. That'd be way too funky. So, but I want to see where those teeth are when it slows down. So let's take off the face and see if there's any problem once I take the face off with this watch running. See, I can see it slowing down again. So it's probably been a minute that I've been chatting away, right? If I put my winder in here again, I do that. Is this helping the problem? Just wind it a bunch of times. All right, let's get on with it. So the first thing I did here is I just take the hour wheel off and take the minute wheel off. Try to take the minute wheel off. and then see if the watch has any issues running with the hour and minute wheel off. Does it stop? Does it have a problem? I'm going to have to put it into the Myers number 58 movement holder and have a look at it as it's running to see if there is any issue. So as far as I can see, the watch is running gangbusters right now with the hour and minute wheel off. So it seems to have no resistance at all, so too bad I just can't deliver it like this. So I'm going to keep watching it to see if there's any problem at all. And if there's no problem at all, it's the hour and minute wheel that are causing me the issues. So from what I can see, in all directions, the watch is running really well with the hour wheel and the minute wheel off. So the other thing I could try to do is figure out if I need to polish that cannon pinion at all, but it's the upper part of the cannon pinion that interacts with that hour wheel. So I don't think there's an issue there. And if I look at the way the hour wheel sits into the watch, or sits down into the watch, there shouldn't be an issue there. So just putting the hour wheel back on here for a second to have a look at the way it snugs down and to see if there's any issue with it touching or scraping. It seems to not have a friction point here. Just put this down on the mat for a second here. Right there we go. And if I look at this hour wheel here, is there a tooth or something that's causing the issue? It does look like it's not round. It looks like the hour wheel has got a little abrasion on both sides here, so I'm not sure what that's from. It might be from somebody trying to put the hour hand on and screwing that up. So there may be a problem right there. So I think Chris was saying that, burnish the inside of that hour wheel to see if you can take out any burrs or whatever, because that might be what the issue is. But the hour wheel, you just move that over here and put the minute wheel back in. And see if there's any problems here with the minute wheel interacting with it. So the watch is running fine right now, and just run this down here. So there may be something in there, a piece of something or something that's snagging it up. Let me see if I can clean this up again. I can see a speck of something right there, and that might be the problem right there. A small speck of something could in fact ruin that interface. So let me just, and the watch is running gangbusters right now. It's running really well, which makes me happy, although I just dumped the hour wheel. So but if I were just to take that off and just take my Rodico here and see if I can maybe clean up the top here a bit. And I'm going to think later do this under the microscope too. That might help. Let me just turn this around here and do the same with the back end here. And then I'm going to take the hour wheel and do the exact same thing here. Just rub it with Rodico to see if there's anything at all that would cause this issue here. I think we're good there. And if I roll the teeth, like that, that's good. And so let's just drop this back in. And I'm assuming there's no issue at all with the cannon pinion, but let's drop that back in. There we go. So that wheel is now in there. And that would be interfacing now with this cannon pinion here, and this cannon pinion would be driving the minute wheel. And I don't know if there's going to be any drag at all. In that interface between the two. And now if I just grab that hour wheel here and do the exact same thing, just kind of clean the bottom of it a bit. And this went through the cleaning machines and everything, right? So it should have been clean. It shouldn't be that. I'm just a little concerned about the end of this thing, and if it's out of round, then there might be an issue, right? And the watch is still running fairly strong, but when I put this down, yeah, I could actually perhaps burnish the inside here, which might help. So there, that's in position now, and it's still running, I think, fairly strong, but I can't turn it upside down or I lose view of the actual wheel here. So now I'm looking at the balance running, and I've got no issue here. It's running really well. So if I prop that up and keep watching it, is there going to be a point where this doesn't run well? Let me put it up. Let me prop this thing up so we can keep looking at it. So there it is, propped up. I'm just going to lean the watch ever so slightly so the hour wheel is still interacting, and it looks like it's running fine right now. And I don't see it slowing down at all. And so, not sure if that little tiny piece of whatever on the minute wheel was causing the problem. Because the minute wheel drives the hour wheel. I'm looking at this still to see if there's any slowdown at all. It seems to be running fine. And you look at the actual, as I said in my diagram, I'd look at, see at the point where the thing slows down, maybe the point, it seems to be slowing down a bit right there. Just a bit. Now, in this situation where it's slowing down just a bit, if I pop off, yeah, there it is there. So it's slowing down at this exact point. So if I pop off that hour wheel, I'm just going to move it up a bit. Will the watch pick up speed? Let me take that hour wheel out completely, because it doesn't look like it might still be interfacing with the gears there. I'm not sure. There, so that's off. And the watch is not picking up speed. It seems to be still running a little slower, which means it might be a interface problem between the cannon pinion and the minute wheel. That, I think, is where the problem exists. Yeah, look at that. So the watch is almost stopped right now. I'll bet you dollars to donuts if I pull that wheel out. I want to actually take a picture of that interface here before I pull it out. So it might be the gears of the cannon pinion. Yeah, I need to turn on my flash maybe too, because I want to see what that looks like. it's almost stopped. So that my diagnostics here is telling me that there's a problem with the interface between the cannon pinion and the minute wheel. So I'm going to turn this flat to have a look at it and put it on the bench because it's not working the way it should. It's running slow, and I want to see what that looks like. Let's look at that under a microscope. All right, there's the point right there where the teeth of the cannon pinion are interfacing with the teeth of the minute hand. There doesn't seem to be an issue there. I don't know if I see any play at all. I'm going to get a needle out here and see if I can move this ever so slightly under the microscope to see if there's any play at all. There seems to be exactly zero play here, so this seems to be locked in here and then locked in there. So at some point this gets released. As you can see, ever so slowly this is going to get released, and at that point there might be some play. Nothing yet. Very carefully putting a little tiny bit of pressure on the teeth here, but it should turn. Yeah, right here the wheel is completely released. So it's kind of in place here, but it's released right over here. So that wheel should be a little free to turn. And I'm trying to put a bit of pressure on here to make it turn. I'm going to get a piece of pegwood out here. It'll be a little less intrusive than what I'm using. So. And I think I need to get close up with my lens here so I can So this is locking in right now to the winding mechanism here. So the next question is, if I remove this here and I look at my winding mechanism, is this winding, is a gear under here causing this gear, right, to be held in place? So that, I think, is the next look, is to see what the situation is with the winding mechanism underneath this, because there might be a gear under here that is stuck, that might need winding, or just need some lubrication or something. So that might be the situation. So it might not be the interface between the cannon pinion and this gear. It might be the interface between the cannon pinion and maybe it's called the crown wheel. I'm trying to remember the name, but I'm just going to clear off a bit of this rodicose. So I may have to disassemble this to have a look underneath to see what's going on. So when I take these gears off, these are the gears that interface with the right here. This gear here interfaces with the seconds hand. So I'll show you this in a second here and see if I can flip this around. I'm going to make sure this goes in the right direction. Seems like it's supposed to rub that way, right? And I'm going to put a little bit of oil on that, just a bit. And I'm going to put not 9010, but one up from 9010, and just on the edges here, like this. And then put that gear in place, because that gear going down might have caused all the friction. And the teeth here are not tapered, so the gear can go down either way without a problem, because the teeth aren't tapered. So if I throw this gear in, as you can see, I'll let you see how this thing operates here. There's how the gear goes down, and I have to actually make sure it's down far enough to interface here. So when I turn this, as you'll see, you're getting this kind of an action here, like that. Now the gear seems to be sitting up a bit, so does this thing need to sit down further? What's the problem there? That is my question. So let me just take the gear up again. This is tricky to grab, but take this up and flip it around the other way. There, it's sitting down there now. So now when this is moving, this should move and this should move. So there should be no friction here at all. So when I push inward, I'm disengaging that gear and I'm winding the watch. As you can see the barrel moving right now, right? See the barrel moving? I'm winding the watch right now. And when I push back like this, it's engaging that gear for setting. So I'm also going to put a little tiny bit of oil in there to make sure that it's not got an oil problem. Though it shouldn't, but it might, you never know. And what I'm going to do here is, as I push this inward, like that, I'm going to put the smallest little bit of oil right here. Don't really need it for the teeth, but I'll put some right here as well. And I'll let that turn like this. So now when the minute wheel is put in, right, and you're winding the watch, I'm going to show you this too, so it's a bit of a detailed video here, but bear with me here. So when you're winding the watch, I'm going to grab the minute wheel now, and assuming maybe the drag was caused by that wheel, I'll go look up the name of it, but you guys can see it right here, and it is interfacing with the crown wheel, which is this one right here. So I just drop that down in place. Take a couple of shots at it here. And usually if you wind it, it'll drop in place. So let me just set the hands a bit and see if I can. There we go. So there's the interface right there. So now watch this. That's how it works in turning this. So now when it's not turning, and that screw keeps it on, right? When this is not turning, then it's got to be almost friction free going through here. So that's able to turn this, and this is not causing the issue, right? So when I screw this in place, let me put the hour wheel on here so you can see what that looks like with the hour wheel on. So now the hour wheel goes on top and interacts, as I said in my drawing, with the pinion of the minute wheel. There you go. And now when I turn this, I'm just going to leave that screw off for a second, so it's not going to hurt anything, then the whole shoot and match moves, right? This all moves like this. But when the cannon pinion is actually driving the watch, it's turning this wheel here. So it's turning the minute wheel. And so I have to have almost zero friction at this point right here. So the works here has to actually be able to move freely. I can't move this now because it's basically interfacing here. So it has to move freely. So I'm going to reassemble this now and see if this will in fact move freely. And just because I'm a little anal retentive, I'm going to put a slight bit of oil on the bottom end of that screw so I don't get, I'm going to put a little bit of oil here so when it interfaces, just move that around here. When that wheel interfaces here with the screw, if there's any friction there, because I can see a line there which would tell me that the teeth of this are rubbing against it, but maybe only when you're winding the watch that it bevels upward a bit. So I apologize for the really long video today, but this I think is the issue. So when I diagnose a problem, I put this screw back in. Of course I got oil on it, so it's not going to want to go in where it's supposed to go. Like that, and I just use a bigger screwdriver to screw that in, right? I move that up a bit so you can see it a bit better. It's just a bit awkward for me right now, but so that is now in place. I tighten it a bit, and I want to see that there's an interaction still, that I don't have that gear squished. And it seems to have a bit of play, which is good. Yeah, so that's good. And now, if I were to look at this watch sideways after being wound, does it have the same problem? So now it seems to be running quite well, but I'm not sure if it'll continue running quite well, but I'm pretty darn sure that's where the problem existed, right there in the actual winding mechanisms and that gear that's sitting on top. So now it's running fairly well. So I'll just sit here and wait to see if the fairly well turns into not so well in the near future, to see if this watch is continuing to work. So I think that's it for the video today, and I'll give you an update if I have another issue. I may still get another mainspring for this, because the mainspring might be able to power through that gear issue if it's stronger. So I may just get another mainspring, although it seems to be running really well right now. So there's the diagnostic and video for today. I hope it was really interesting. We got to kind of isolate the problem and hopefully resolve it. And I'm not sure again if that's resolved or not, but I think it was that small wheel that was causing the issue. And I'll figure out what it's named and I'll put it up on the video. Thanks a lot, and I'll catch you next time. All right, JD again, and I got to say bye with my face. So the watch seems to be running really strong right now. I may still replace the mainspring on this watch to give it even more huff, but I think that's where my issue was with that particular gear. And that wheel, according to my books, is called either the setting wheel or the intermediate setting wheel. I think in this situation here in one of my books, it's actually the setting wheel. So just to prove that I looked at it, it's called the setting wheel. So that setting wheel interacts with the clutch wheel, and I think I said crown wheel, but that's not right. So the crown wheel's on the other side. So the crown wheel's on top of all of that. So that's called the setting wheel. There was no intermediate setting wheel. There was just the setting wheel interacting with the clutch. So it seems to be running nicely now. We'll just keep an eye on that. Oh, look at that. Get that lens out of the way. And all your comments are welcome. Thanks for all the suggestions. But see how I diagnose the problem starting from the end and working my way inward and knowing that the thing ran well with all those wheels out. So I think that Mark was the guy who suggested it might be a problem with the setting mechanism. So the setting mechanism and that interaction. But the watch is running super strong right now. So this could be a good scenario. So I'm just going to keep an eye on it, let it run. I got to go to lunch soon. So I'll let this thing run through lunch. I got to leave in 15 minutes. And I'll see you later. Thanks a lot. Let me get this video up really fast. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and hit like.